Able to go ahead and, but we are back. It is Wednesday morning, March 19th, and we are going through the bills on our wall. We want to welcome up our next presenter, Representative Charles Kimball, has H 413. It's here to tell us all about it.
Thank you, Matt.
In that one sentence and one sentence only, but that wouldn't be fair. I wasn't here for the morning ones, but I got here in time for yours.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Charlie Kimball, representative from Woodstock, representing Woodstock, Reading, and Plymouth. So 413 is a fairly simple bill for transportation, and it was requested. I could have put requested by a constituent underneath, but one of my constituents has been a snowplow driver for about 25 years on a particular stretch of Route 106 in between Woodstock and Reading, and has come to know transportation very well, as you can imagine. But he came to me with a concern about both two things. One is having headlights on during inclement weather conditions, not just when your wipers are on due to fog or dust and that kind of thing. As well as the other thing is taillights not being visible because of things that are attached onto the back end of a car. So I think we've all seen where we're driving along and you'll see a car with things attached onto the back, a rack that's below, or sometimes bicycles, so you can't see the taillights, and it makes for unsafe conditions. He actually had the experience of almost rear-ending a car that was in front of him because he just couldn't see the taillights, couldn't see the car in inclement weather. So that's what this bill aims to do. I worked with Ledge Council to figure out what the right wording was, looking at some different states as well. And this was from Damian Leonard, who I think, right?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, good. Who helped me work on it to come up with the right wording. And even if you look at the bill in section, just a minute, please. Let me check my reference. Specific conditions, I only wanted inclement weather. And if you look at, it's in section 1, paragraph 2. It's talking about on the highway in front of the vehicle are not clearly discernible due to rain, snow, fog, dust, smoke, or other particulate matter. It's really trying to be very specific as to what it means to be in inclement weather. And then below, I had a conversation with Representative Keiser about whether or not 300 feet is the right distance. I have to assume that that is also in statute as 300 feet for taillights to be visible, but I do not know for sure. I just assumed it was. That's the whole bill.
So thank you.
Yeah, after 15 minutes. Yeah.
So this is not, these are not rules that currently exist. I mean, people aren't required to have their taillights on or their lights on before dusk and.
Before dusk, yes, that is, I believe that is actually required, but in terms of inclement weather, it's more a question of that. So I was also approached by another legislator who said, well, with the automatic lights, you don't really need them. It's like, well, not every car was made after a certain time. I mean, I have a 1990 car and it doesn't have anything automatic.
And you can turn them off too.
Yes, right. So that was like, yeah, true, but not all cars are that smart.
Anybody else have any other questions? Representative Case?
So say I go to take off to Maine and I load up the back of my rig with bicycles. Are you saying that I can't do that anymore if somebody can't see the lights?
I'm saying you can do that, but you have to make sure that the lights are visible in some way. There could be, I mean, like a trailer, when you're pulling a trailer, you have to have a plug-in for your lights so the trailer is visible. Same thing when you've got stuff hanging off the back. So I've also had that same situation. I've got a bike rack on the back of my car, and I can see the taillights through it from how it is. But if you do have a rack that is not appropriately designed, you could be covering up all of your taillights. So I would say yes.
So, but you're being specific to bad weather. So if I'm gonna, what if it's raining out, right? If I'm heading off on vacation, got the bikes all loaded up. So somebody could say I couldn't see their lights, even though some other person might have been able to see them. So I gotta go. So we're gonna someone's opinion on whether they could see your lights or not who knows if that person was looking down at their cell phone? And they're like, well, I don't want to get in trouble. I'm gonna say I couldn't, he had bicycles on the back. I'm gonna say that I couldn't see through the lights through the bicycle because, well, it was misting rain. Sometimes vacations you take off, sometimes it's raining. You're not gonna sit around and wait around for the sun to show up before you take off, right?
Well, it's, this section on taillights is not specific to inclement weather. So that section is specific to just the taillights have to be visible. And it's important to have them visible all times for safety on the highway. But so I understand your point that if you're going on vacation, sometimes you look like the clampets going down the hill.
Turn on yourself.
But it's important to have those lights visible, even if it's just a temporary transportation. We've all had situations where we load stuff on a car, we're going to the dump or something, and you can't see the lights on the back. But it becomes dangerous if you can't see the taillights.
Representative Powell?
Yeah, in existing law, and I have a bike trailer too. And I get it, if I put a bike trailer on, a couple bikes on there, that could be blocking my brake lights, right? And today, would that not be illegal? Not be at fault?
I think it would be highly subjective for a police officer to say your taillights are not visible because it's not specifically in statute.
Okay, thanks. I mean, you can't, I'm gonna.
You're still got
I
it.
mean, you can't drive without taillights,
Right.
right? But if you were to put something on that totally blocked it, then, there's an argument that you don't have taillights, but yeah.
It'd be similar as if you just took duct tape and put them all over your
Yeah.
taillights so no light can emit. If you cover them up obstruct them somehow else, it's effectively the same thing.
Representative Lau?
I think I'm understanding. So right now in statute, you're required to have taillights, but they're not required necessarily to be visible. That is the part that is left up to, it's a subjective. Is that what we're trying to do, make it more
I think it's
specific?
the aim of the bill is to make explicit that if you put things on the back of your car, then the taillights still have to be visible.
Okay.
Representative Burke?
And I may have missed something, but the taillights need to be on or just visible for the brake lights?
So the taillights have to be, it's a good question.
Welcome to our world.
If your windshield lights on, the lights need to be on.
Right.
Because that's associating inclement weather with having your lights on.
2 red lamps from being visible at a distance of 300 feet behind the vehicle.
Representative Kimball, I would have to say something that I probably everybody already knows. One thing that we hear from everybody that comes and tells us, find out we're on transportation, this one's really simple.
Yeah, I know.
Go ahead and do it. Mine is really simple, and I don't mean this directed, I wasn't here for the earlier ones, but I guarantee you the same thing. The level of detail and trouble that it takes to amend or to change a DMV law is never simple. And I just, all we would ask for everybody that comes in and present, we try to send them back with an idea that don't ever say the transportation. Because everybody starts with, this is a really simple one.
Yeah.
And within 8 minutes, you find out that it will take us the whole rest of the term, the whole rest of the session to figure out how to deal with these, because it is anything but. Anyway.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. And if I may, I mean, I'm a cyclist. I have racks on the back of my car as well. And this is not necessarily bike rack friendly.
And
Recognizing that.
we always assume the best intent, everybody wants it to make it as safe as possible.
Yes.
So I also should start with that. But Representative Burke, were you all set?
I'm all done.
Representative Wells and then Representative Powell?
Yeah, to me, that's just I like it. It's a common sense bill. You should be able to see those. And if you're blocking them, move them so you can see those lights. Either they run all the time or they certainly come on when you apply brakes, and that creates your rear end. So yeah, it sounds like a good idea to me.
Representative Powell, sure.
Yeah, this is an education to me. It's like I said, I had bike racks. Just quick search, you can buy bike racks with lights for them. And I wasn't aware of that. Makes total sense, though. You make that would. California, you can't block your license plate with a bike rack. So, there's a lot of
do you
things
do
with
that?
obstructions, with racks that you can put on that you just assume, hey, it's totally okay. But, so there's certainly an education piece to this, if not something else.
Anybody else have any questions? Well, then thank you very much for,
Thank you for the opportunity.
and,
Thank you.
yeah, no, it's.
I think UConn is gonna be one.
There we go. That's always a smart,
now.
that's a smart thing to say.
They're never getting past one. Sorry.
Careful, careful.
Yeah.
March Madness is on the mind of everybody in the room, whether they want to or not. We're just pushing ahead, and I see our next distinguished guest and return, a previous member of the House Transportation Committee, Representative Bartholomew. If you'd like to join us, we will. If you're ready, we're a few minutes ahead of schedule. We'll be happy to start when you're ready to start. I guess we're coming in on H460. Boy, your timing is a whole lot different. This one just came through, right? It just came up on the board just in the last few days, whereas other people have been waiting for this day since January. But you, perfect timing. So welcome back to the committee room and.
Well, thank you. It's good to be back. I see you've given away my seat. This was my seat. I'm Representative John Bartholomew. I am from Windsor 1, so I represent Heartland, Windsor, and West Windsor. And I put this in as a short form bill, which is part of why it came so late. They kick all those way at the end of the list for some reason, which they say they want to do short form bills, but then they don't prioritize them. But I did that partly because to save legislative council some time, but also because I'm not sure of the best approach for this. This was an idea that I put forward at the last biennium, and it had a lot of support. The list of co-sponsors is not really of much significance here. I just grabbed who I thought might be interested. I didn't do a huge effort to get a bunch of co-sponsors, but I think there are a lot of people who would be supportive. The basic idea is to create a bicycle trail, bicycle route from basically the entire length of Route 5 from the Massachusetts border all the way to Quebec. And let me use the map here. What's really cool about this idea is, since it's a river valley, by Vermont standards, it's almost flat. It also parallels 91. So a lot of the traffic is already off Route 5 and on the interstate. And as you go up, you'll notice that all along the route, there are towns on both sides of the river that are basically 8 to 10 miles apart. So it's a really cool area in terms of tourism. The opportunities are immense. Bike trails are very popular, and also in terms of transportation. In my own area, I live a third of the way up there, trying to get to White River. Route 5 is not conducive right now for bicycle travel, but it's very doable in terms of distance, particularly with electric bicycles. So I think in terms of our goals to meet our transportation, our greenhouse gas emission reductions, and the possibilities for tourism, I think they're immense. There was as a result of the last time we did this, there was a survey that went out to all of the towns along there, and we got pretty good response. Some towns didn't respond, but of those that did, many did, almost unanimously. I think there's maybe just one that said they weren't interested, but all the others said this sounds like a great idea. Of course, at that point, there was no price tag attached to it, and that again, we don't have that. So anyway, I put this in as a short form bill. The basic idea is to formally designate the Route 5 as a bicycle corridor, which should give some idea like this is the direction we'd like to go, and try to move forward with it. And then have the agency put together a steering committee with, again, this whole thing is open to discussion, who you want to include, but it would be representatives from the tourism industry, managers of recreational facilities and rail trails, conservation organizations all along the river. Organizations dedicated to reducing greenhouse gas emissions from transportation, historic preservation organizations, forest parks and recreation, Vermont Trails and Greenways Council. And I also didn't mention another thing that's really nice about this idea is there are a lot of trails that already exist on both sides of the river. So one of the goals would be to connect this with like the Memorial Valley Rail Trail. And there are trails that go from White River, I think, nearly all the way to Concord, New Hampshire. So coordinating all these trails, I think, would be really beneficial. So again, the whole idea is to designate it as a trail, and then the thing that this committee would be working on is well, there's an organization I can tell you really nothing about, the Connecticut River Byways Program. They have scenic, historic, and tourism goals. So you want to coordinate with what they're doing. We need to identify funding sources, what the logistical considerations are. Is this trail going to be all off-road, or is it going to be bike lanes, or both? Should it be a phased approach? It almost has to be a phased approach. What are the real benefits for tourism? It's hard to know until we really look at it, but it seems to me that there pretty obviously would be good. And I already mentioned coordinating with existing trails on both sides of the river. Another possibility in developing this is we might find that if we can actually coordinate with another state, what a profound idea. There are probably areas where if we were going to designate the route, maybe it should cross over into New Hampshire and go for 10 miles in New Hampshire and cross back over because of existing infrastructure that it might already be in place on the other side of the river. So that's the basic idea. I think it's a good one. It has had some really good support, but we don't know what it would take to actually do it. But somehow we found the money historically to build the road in the first place. So we ought to be able to find a way to make it a little bigger and then make this a viable route. So that's basically it. Many of you heard this spiel before who've been here. Sorry about the repetition, but it didn't go away.
Representative Wells?
What's the best way to put in a bike road? Do you add, I don't know, 6 feet of tar to the existing highway, and that's what you're looking into, trying to decide how you approach that?
Well, I mean, that would have to be evaluated because I mean, the one advantage is in Route 5, much of that route is unlike areas where you're going through River Valley and you got canyon walls on either side. Route 5 is not like that. It's a pretty wide valley, so there would be a lot of options in how to do it, and it would probably be a combination of both.
Representative Burke?
Yeah, I think when we first started out, didn't we think about having the RPCs in each region sort of spearheading this or getting people involved? Wasn't that part of the legislation?
Well, we didn't really do any legislation other than doing the study.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually a study, it was a survey.
Right.
The agency doesn't like, someone's got to look at the whole picture is where I'm coming from. And that's what's missing. And when I proposed it before, it was basically a feasibility study, and the agency viewed that as a multi-million-dollar project, whereas I figured that meant you put someone on a bicycle down in Massachusetts and give them a credit card and just ride it and pen a notebook and make notes. That was my idea of a feasibility study. Theirs was, I'm not sure what.
Representative Fowler?
Yeah,
Are you volunteering to get your bike down at the Massachusetts border
I've
with a
ridden
credit
from
Card?
Massachusetts to the border. I've done this a couple times in different
I
sections.
knew you had.
And I would say, as Rep. Bartholomew has said, the majority of it doesn't need really much there because there's not much traffic. People are on 91 and there's not a lot of hills. And certainly you're not going east and west across the state. There are sections that, when you go into some towns where the intersections aren't really good for bicyclists, so that there are areas that could be improved. And I think incrementally working on this, if you identify it as this is the route, then when there are intersections done, or when the regional planning commissions are looking at planning out future transportation, if it's incorporated in there. And I will say there were a section in Windsor up to White River Junction where I went across the river because it was, less traveled roads and whatnot. So, and there's state parks all along to camp. So it's a great bike road, and there are sections in it that, we should be paying attention as a state and looking at them and encouraging, as we go, we fix these particular areas that are challenging, and incrementally over time, I think it could become quite a tourist attraction. So I think it's a great idea to continue to pursue. And with the realization, you're not going to say, how much is it going to cost to do this? You just identify it as such, and you incrementally make improvements. Let the regional planning commissions identify the particular spots that are more dangerous and work on it as a goal, long-term goal.
Representative White? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I love this idea. I mean, I think, so a bike route that goes, from throughout the state of Vermont sounds like it's great for, our climate goals, for tourism. As we know, tourism is like really important in Vermont. So I would think that it is, I'm not exactly sure how to go about something like this. I mean, we have in the Mad River Valley, we have a proposal or a plan to develop a bike path through several towns. And I think we've had a scoping study, or we are moving on a scoping study, and we've had lots of community involvement. So I'm not exactly sure the process, but I would think that like economic development would have a role to play here. Office of Tourism. So I would think that there are other committees or agencies that would see the benefit of developing something like this. And just in terms of how you're envisioning this path, it sounds like you're talking about some road, some asphalt divided, where you're dividing car traffic from bike traffic, and then there are already some existing bike paths off of the road. Is that what?
I don't know of any along Route 5 that exists now. I'm thinking more of trails that exist off east-west.
So like mountain bike trails or bike trails, but that you could connect with, but that wouldn't be part of the.
Yeah, I don't think they're
Informal
mountain
route.
bike trail. They're more developed, more rideable than a mountain bike trail. Crushed gravel or some paved.
But just in terms of economic development, I think about, think about Quebec, and I went on a several day tour a couple of years ago. Just it's a big driver of tourism, for the towns. And I think it's kind of a destination, so.
Well, and I mentioned the spacing of towns is really ideal for this kind of thing. And you think about restaurants, you think about
Lodging.
bed and breakfast, bicycle shops, all kinds of support activities that could develop along that route.
Representative Wild?
Yeah, I just, so I'm thinking, John, that the feasibility study that was, done was just basically polling asking RPCs to sort of poll people, what were they interested in? Only a few of them, as I recall, kind of like really took the engagement seriously, and it was kind of spotty was the response. So yeah, I like this idea of Rep. White of kind of broadening or stepping up the approach to include the tourism. There could be some opportunities to partner with New Hampshire on this. They have more money than we do. And they have all of those bridges that they, largely take care of. So that could be potentially a cost savings. I'm just thinking kind of more on a more granular level. What about just using the interest that is there with those RPCs that were interested to partner with Local Motion and maybe AARP on a sort of audit of the conditions. So you get that can be mapped and you can have that information right there. You start to kind of do this. I love this idea and I think it will sell itself. It's just, probably not in your lifetime.
Are you saying I'm old or that it's?
No, I mean, all of our lives, even Will Greer's lifetime, essentially. It's baby steps, but I think start doing the things that we can do right now and then just kind of starting to string it together. It's going to take a while
Well, that's part of why I thought the official designation as a bike corridor would say, this is a priority. It may take forever, but we're stating this is something we're working on.
Yeah. Bartholomew Trail.
Don't have to name it after me.
There's some history, what? Does anybody else have any other questions? Spot?
Just comment, great idea. Love to see it happen. I hope it doesn't take as long as Representative Lyle said, but I know it takes a lot of blue red tape to get to that point. Great idea, though.
Okay. Thank you very much, Representative Bartholomew, for coming in.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
See you back at the old spot.
That's fine.
He's saying, I can't.
Oh, I didn't catch that. You should have got that one.
How many points back on that?
And I've done other sections.
That's great. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Because
This is what I think, the New Hampshire connection could help speed things along. They own all those bridges, so if they want people to come over, they would largely be paying for that.
Representative Galfetti, are you pinch hitting today or are you?
Really speed up the process.
Even if it's
Pinch
exactly.
hitter.
Hitter.
Excellent.
Meeting coach.
You are in. Representative Galfetti is going to join us for H467.
All right.
With your piece, we're going through probably sophomore agenda. We're sponsors or presenters all the way through. So
Okay.
simple introductions and
Well, I'll make this quick. I know you don't have a lot of time
you got 15 minutes
All right.
or less.
Then if you-
Oh, wait a minute, they might
for
have
questions.
cut you down to 10 now. You got 15 if you need it.
Okay. So the big parts of this short form are the implementation of a regional fleet of heavy equipment trucks, especially the Vectors. Because many towns lack the equipment to maintain stormwater system and clear debris after floods. And having a regional fleet that could deal with this problem in kind of a globalized way would really help towns bounce back a lot quicker and be prepared for upcoming events, especially if we have some kind of back-to-back situation, if we had a regionalized fleet. And then the second thing is developing some sort of asset management system so we know where all of the pieces of equipment are in the state during these flooding events. Because as we saw, the flooding was regionalized in each event. It wasn't necessarily Linden, Barry, and, Ludlow all got flooded at the same time. It was different parts of the state. And so if we have a real clear understanding of where our equipment is that can deal with each of these issues in a town or municipality, then we can be a lot more effectively managing our resources. Done. Questions?
Count on him for that.
I think this is a great concept. And in Heinsberg, we had a big flood and right afterwards, we needed all kinds of equipment. Are you looking at like both state and privately held equipment, like in this inventory or just state?
Primarily state equipment, but
you know, your question brings up a good point. If we should be considering where private assets lie as well. I don't know what the linkage there between the state and private firms would be, how willing private firms would be to link up with the state to disclose where and what they're getting for their resources. But I know that we've definitely had towns that have subcontracted with private, you know, folks to mitigate some of these flood problems. So I think if we could incorporate that, that'd be wonderful.
There was a whole bunch of other hangouts with that. Representative White?
Is the idea of this that we would purchase a separate fleet to be used for natural disasters like this? Or are you envisioning that we look at the Agency of Transportation's central garage, I think, where they keep some of their big expensive equipment and try to work within the fleet that we currently
Well, we
have?
all know we don't have money for a separate fleet for sure. So I think it would definitely be looking at what the state resources are as a whole and potentially positioning different pieces of equipment in different parts of the state that we have redundancy in. So you don't have all three of your Vector trucks in one garage. You've got them positioned throughout the state in preparation for these flooding events and kind of doing things that way. And then augmenting certainly our fleet of response vehicles that we have would be something. But again, that's money. So I think this is more about, you know, figuring out where things are and where things need to be in a clearer manner, albeit I think there is an increased need for those Vector trucks. I think those do a lot of the storm debris and culvert clean out and drainage and stuff like that. And I think that, you know, those were very helpful in Barry after the floods. So that's something that could certainly be considered.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like this equipment's needed before the flood, right? I mean,
Right.
as the culverts are somewhat blocked, and when you get those blocked culverts, that's when the road goes away.
Right.
So it'd be interesting to speak with my town to say, you know, I'm curious if the state, they have equipment and they support towns, do they actually allow, you know, help towns with like a vac truck?
Yep.
Can a town ask the state, hey, we've got these culverts we need to clean out? Can you
Yeah, and I think that speaks back to some of the larger language in the bill of having these coordinated responses of towns being, on some sort of priority list so that they can come and clean things out with these Vector trucks and, you know, be able to utilize our resources as much as possible to help mitigate flood risks as well.
Representative Burke?
Yeah, I'm just thinking that in a natural disaster, they're gonna be needs to be out on state roads. There's gonna be the needs of the towns and the needs of the
Sure.
state. And so just working that out. But I think that could just be worked out in agreements ahead of time.
Yeah, I would think so. And then, yeah, you know, maybe if they're in a region that's most impacted, you know, you're gonna want to get the state roads clear first, but then the town roads are gonna be in that region as well. Cause like I said, you know, the flooding in Barry didn't affect Newport.
Yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Representative Loudon?
Yeah, I just want to say I agree strongly. And it seems to me that the RPCs and Vermont Emergency Management are working more closely together now because the RPCs do this culvert inventory, so they have that data about like where all the areas of need are and the problems and so forth. And they also help towns coordinate with their compliance with general roads permit. So there seems like there's some existing kind of
Infrastructure there, yeah.
bureaucratic infrastructure that could be just sort of stepped up. And one thing I've been thinking about is I wonder how many of these vac trucks we have in the state fleet right now. And if there is also, you know, the potential for having some kind of maybe developing a model memorandum of understanding where private entities could have a kind of a contract to go as needed, where needed, and get some kind of liability insurance through the state, through the
Yeah.
agreement. So they could kind of like, we could just get them there really quickly. Because as
Absolutely.
we were saying, guys got hit like right back to back, didn't you?
Yeah,
So we're learning that, time is of the essence.
figuring out how to bring in the private sector is definitely a big one. When you look at these events and how they've transpired in Vermont, a lot of private companies just jumped in.
Yeah.
And we're happy to go wherever they were needed. So I think that there's can be an open line of communication there. Certainly maybe not something that's statutory, but a continued, if the state knows where things need to go and people are willing to step up and help out, having a, kind of an overstructure where things need to be would be helpful.
Anybody else?
Time.
Thank you very much, Representative Galipetti. We appreciate you coming
All
in.
right, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I think for this stretch, that was our cleanup. Right?
We have Phil and Molly, right?
Shifted online, it's gonna be
Oops, you gotta get there's an updated list
All right.
apparently. Wow.
So that's it. All right.
Thank you. That's it for this morning. Right now, we're going to head into break. When we come back at 10, well, push through it and do it now, or all we're gonna look for. We're done for the rest of the morning, except for committee prep work related to the floor presentation and section. So when it says committee work time on the agenda, that is for those that are going to be presenting and for the presentation in Ways and Means and in appropriations and whatnot. So you'll see around this time some free time on your agenda piece, and we'll be back tomorrow morning with the same sort of one next questions.
Yes, so are you gonna divvy up the sections?
Well, that's what we were debating, whether we should push through it now and then take our break
Yeah.
rather than coming back. So
Yeah.
am I going to assign them? I didn't get any volunteers per se, but I know that Tim, I'm sorry, Tim was coordinating. I would say that wrong. You're right. I said that wrong. Representative Corcoran is coordinating with, and Representative Pouch was volunteering to take a piece or refresh my memory there.
Well, maybe we go through the sections and see who's willing to.
We've got only 15 or only 14 sections, so.
Listen, like I said, I think Representative Pouts said he'd be willing to take on the Miles base. So I guess I'll go backwards, is that the last two sections are Drive Electric and EV charging. So I had Molly for that, and then Phil would be 10 through 12 for town highway indexing and Miles base. And then we go to the T-board public transit sections. Kansas, I don't know if you'd be willing to
Sure.
do that. And then you have 4 through 6, which are the trails. Very certain.
It's inside baseball there. I'm sorry. A little inside baseball. All right.
So which sections? The trails, with molesting.
4 through 6.
I want, yes, I do, yes, I do. I'm gonna have so much fun with that.
Yeah.
No, I won't.
Heavy on the DNA trail.
Yeah. So, all right, so those are sections. Yeah, and then like I said, then you have the beginning, and I was just saying, Matt, if he's walking through, you just have the adoption of the white book and then cancellation of the subsidies.
The change in the two, yep.
And then the
St. Albans and
St. Albans.
Highway, since it's right in my,
in recent areas. And that's
literally
it.
less than half
Yeah.
a mile from
Yeah.
from our business.
Yeah.
So I guess that makes a certain degree of sense.
Yeah, so 1 through 3, Matt, 4 through 6, Chris, 7 through 9, Candace, 10 through 12, Phil, and then 13 through 14. This is, like I said, this is probably one of the smallest bills.
Yeah.
There's not enough, people are disappointed, like if Lloyd wanted something or There's really.
Public transit?
It's okay.
I mean, we could do
Maybe I'll
like one
jump in on the
section. for-
DMV bill. It's like-
Oh, there's 50 sections. Let's be clear, there's 50 sections coming from the DMV.
Okay.
Yeah, so you-
Hey.
Okay, I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Explain it.
Yeah. And then we do-
Okay. So
Well.
work time, and
it's-
we do have committee time on Friday,
It
specifically
has to go through.
after the presentation is be prepared to talk about you, if you have any particular priorities related to the stuff we covered today, tomorrow, and Friday morning. If you see something that you want to flag, that you think that we should be considering for the DMV, miscellaneous DMV bill on Friday, I want to hear about it, I guess is what I'm saying, is after we go through these for Tuesday, Wednesday, or Wednesday, Thursday, and then on Friday, we finish them up. Friday, we'll have committee discussion, at least it's not finalized or anything, but flagging something for a particular interest that we are going to want to hear more about.
So you mean of the bills that we may have heard about and been around the wall and perhaps other things, like parts of other bills too?
If there's,
Yeah.
if there's parts of it, if we're going to
Okay.
build the agenda outside of what's already in the, so we're gonna, I guess we're gonna answer that in a more complete way, I guess. We're gonna start up next week, and start working on, we have a couple of different things that we have to finish up for next week or work on next week, but then there's going to be the DMV bill all the way through, however long it takes us to go through the existing. While we're doing that, we will bring in things that might be relevant to it or be working things that you flag from this or any other bill. We'll be through that timeline and then what we might want to add at the end, but we want to have it so that as we're bringing in testimony, we're not having the same person come back.
A list of.
Kind of an idea, so that if we're going to be bringing in people from the DMV and AOT, and we know that there's something else we're going to want to work on, we'll want to bring in that presentation at the same time and try to build that timeline of having people in and have them touch it. If it's the same people and it's 2 or 3 subjects, I'd rather have them kind of come in, work it through the bill all the way through. It may not be perfect, but that's at least the idea. If you're particularly interested in championing something, I'd like to know it sooner rather than later.
Okay.
And that we can find a way to include it in the timeline over the second half of the piece, of the session. Yes.
And I guess also that if there is really something that we really want to put in this DMV bill, not that I'm advocating for anything, but if there really is something, we also have to keep in mind is that the Senate warning committees get shut down earlier. They're not open
Oh, yeah.
year round. So when we send a bill back to them, their committee might not be able to hear it. And they've used that excuse in the past as well. We haven't had time to take testimony. So the sooner that we can tell them, hey, start prepping for this because it's coming your way, might be beneficial if there's something that we want them to hear because they do shut down.
We'll be going through this whole bill.
Yeah.
And if we have something that, I totally echo that, it has to be done. And then as that time frame comes through, based on what you called them yesterday, prognosticators, we will be then moving into a transition. Should we get through the whole, when we get through the whole DMV bill? Should, because there have been years there hasn't been one.
No, that's.
There's 2, there has one that we didn't pass one out.
Oh,
That
yes.
can still happen. That happens. We didn't do a DMV bill. This one's much bigger than perhaps that year.
Yeah.
And then we will be looking at, should there be the extra time or should there be at the end, that will be the effort of what are we as a committee queuing up for next year and using our time to highlight so that when the budget proposals and languages were being get built for next year, that there would perhaps be a messages that our committee has sent in things that we are queuing up for next year will be sort of at the end of the DMV process. I mean, not, there's time in between, but that would be a concept of, for the committee to understand sort of the timeline of what we're doing. Yes.
There's also that bill from the Senate, noise bill that just passed the Senate
Okay.
coming our way. Separate, I mean, which is a little different from a bill that's just been introduced. It's already passed the Senate.
So that'll potentially be on our timeline for this year.
Ordinance. Stuff helping, yeah. And so no,
But it's
how
not,
things play out.
well, and I guess I would say along that lines, because I don't want to say that I committed to. The DMV bill is our charge. Bills that are outside of the DMV bill would be secondary to that, but it just sort of like we did AT bill, we're going to do a miscellaneous DMV bill. And then if there are other things like what Representative Burke's referring to, that would be in addition to. But our charge does not require us to do that, but it could be, it becomes like any other bill on the wall in terms of what we decide to work on. and include or not. Yes, Representative Powell.
Yeah, do we have an idea when the T-bill will hit the floor, so we're ready? So it's got two committees to still go through.
Yeah, we gotta get a small matter, you know, told them, but yeah, we still got our Matt has to go for the two committees, so, it'd probably be late next.
We don't have a number yet. do we?
Oh, late next.
488.
Yeah, I'm,
It's page 488, and it doesn't have to go to Ways and Means because.
yeah, it's gonna go to Ways and Means, then it's gonna come back on the floor, and then get sent to
That's the
appropriations,
number.
and then come back on.
I didn't hear it. I haven't been notified.
Probably late next week.
I just looked,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's got a number now?
Page 488,
There you go.
So I'm
I didn't
assuming
know
the
that.
speaker is gonna send it to Ways and Means today,
yes.
so send it there, so Ways and Means is gonna have to set up a time with Matt tomorrow or whatever. They have to do their thing, and depending on when they voted on, Spear is gonna then have to wait the next. Yeah, I'm thinking late next week, I'm just trying to, yeah, probably.
What's today? Wednesday?
Wednesday.
So I know they have to get their bill out by Friday, I think, or do. they have an extension?
Fridays, yeah, yeah.
I don't think they have an extension, but
What, is it education on the extra means?
They got exempt from the crossover.
Right.
Yeah,
I think they can go into early April
yeah,
if they need to.
we might be here.
I keep saying that. You keep saying that, but we will go through the miscellaneous DNB bill and any additional pieces at the same time that might be going into it. And then we'll be looking to queue things up for next year. Is our time to work. Okay. Thank you all very much. Thank you to those that agreed to present, and thank you all for your work to get the whole piece through. And hope you got something else.
Yes, thank you.
And we are adjourned.